So maybe you've decided that you'd like to work in commercial photography, and your entry level is going to be a freelance photo assistant. These are my top 10 skills that you need to have. Hey everybody, Jeff here. So I was thinking about, what does a photo assistant need if they're looking to, maybe you've decided I want to be a photo assistant because I'd like to work in advertising photography, or I'd like to work in, editorial photography, but I still need to kind of learn the ropes of this whole world and see what it's all about. So you decided that being a photo assistant is a good route to take. It really is. It's a really great entry-level position because not only are you getting paid a day rate, but you're also kind of learning along the way more stuff. You can kind of test different studios and photographers out. You can kind of see like, oh, do I like a food studio? Do I like working with editorial photographers? Do I like working in this catalog house? The various types of commercial photography enterprises. And you can kind of figure out where you think you fit. But to do so, you need a certain set of skills in order to be the person that is going to be called for these jobs. This is my list of the top 10 skills that a photo assistant should have. Skill number 10, Adobe Photoshop. Oh, surprising. You thought that should be higher up on the list. You probably thought that should be like 1 or 2, right? To be a photo assistant? Not so. Most photo assistants will start out as like a second assistant or a third assistant. Occasionally they'll start out as a first assistant, maybe for like an editorial photographer doing like a short half-day magazine shoot, that kind of thing. It's mostly schlep fest. You're moving gear around and setting up lights and things like that. But knowing Adobe Photoshop, I would say, is not totally critical these days to being a photo assistant. That's really more the role of the digital technician on set to know that program. Can it be helpful if there's no budget for the digital technician and they want you to clone a couple things out here and there? Maybe so. You'll have to kind of figure out like, well, how much Photoshop am I doing? That's kind of a specialist skill. If you're being asked to do a lot of Adobe Photoshop on set, that's kind of a specialty, honestly. And you should probably be getting paid something more comparable to what a digital technician or retoucher on set is getting paid, not just, a lower photo assistant rate. Photo assistant is really the entry-level thing. It's good that you know Adobe Photoshop. It's going to help you be able to move upward or laterally in your career, but I wouldn't say it's the highest, most important thing for a photo assistant to know. I've worked with plenty of photo assistants that don't know Photoshop at all, and they've looked over my shoulder saying, gosh, I really need to know this program. Maybe not. They're not being asked to do that on set that day. So, number 9, Capture One Pro. Here's another one that's low on my list of top 10. Still handy to know, mainly because, there's a lot of sets that, don't have a digital tech, and you being able to do something just really basic in Capture One, such as type in the name of the next shot, that could be really handy. And it helps you kind of, get a leverage in if you want to move into a digital tech kind of capacity later on. And it also informs you as a shooter on how to use that program because it could be really handy for your own work down the line. Number 8, camera operations. Again, most of the time as a photo assistant, you're not the one taking the photo. You are helping to facilitate that process. And, possibly there might be times where, depending upon what's happening, you might have to like press the shutter release or, make an adjustment to the camera either in Capture One or manually on the camera. It's more that, as entering this field, you should understand manual operation on cameras anyhow. You should know how these things work. But I wouldn't necessarily say that it's the most critical aspect of being a photo assistant. It's lower on my list. It's within the top 10, but there's other more important things. Number 7, reading people. So it's a really important skill to be able to kind of read the room and read the people that are in it. You have these different players there. You've got the photographer, and you might have, the digital tech that's over there working. And then maybe you have an art director that's in the room, or a client, or maybe both, an art director from an agency and then their client. And so you have to be careful, to be aware that as the photo assistant, it's really not your job to be interjecting your opinion about the photograph at all. That's not your role. That's not why you're there. The only times in the past, in the beginning of my career when I photo assisted for a few years, the only time that I ever interjected my opinion about the photograph at hand was when the art director or the photographer asked me directly. And I was always very careful to, kind of keep it loose and not get, I wasn't going to disparage anything. It's so you kind of have to be able to read the room or read the people. It's not your job to chime in on styling or lighting or anything like that. However, the caveat to that might be that something's going wrong. Maybe the camera's slightly out of focus, right? And you see it, the photographer's tied up doing something. You're not going to yell out in the room, "Hey, the shot's out of focus." That would not be good. You're going to go over to the photographer and quietly tell them, it's a little soft. Want me to fix that? Or it's a little soft, and see what they say, right? That's, you're helping them in this process. You're not there to like call out mistakes because there's a lot of stuff going on, right? And sometimes this happens. Sometimes the shot's a little hot. They're doing some reportage and they're hand holding the shot and they're, being kind of loose about it. You're not going to be the one to kind of call out their mistakes for the room to hear. So reading people is really important, reading the room. Number 6, using grip equipment safely. As a photo assistant, it's probably more imperative that you understand how to properly set a C-stand and how to properly set up light stands and how to lock things down, how to coil cables correctly, how to use sandbags correctly, which part of the C-stand you put the sandbag on, stuff like that, how to use a Cardellini clamp, how to use a Mayfer clamp. When do you use spring clamps? When is a big bend clamp used? There's all these different kinds of like pieces of grip equipment, and that would be important information for you to gather, to understand. Really, as a photo assistant, you're the grip on set. You're the person who's going to be asked, "Hey, can you set a C-stand over there? Hey, can you set that wall up and secure it with a C-stand?" You'd need to know how to do that without that thing falling on anybody. Being able to set up, high rollers with, 10 by 12 by or 20 by overhead butterfly silk on it, on frames and ears. You'd need to know what all that stuff is and how to set it up so that it doesn't come falling down and hurt anybody, right? How to set up a floppy over the set. How to set up a scrim jim, knowing the difference between all these different diffusions and nets and GoPros and cookies and all the different terms that you might hear on set. All that stuff is important, knowing and understanding and using grip equipment safely. Number 5, using strobe light and their modifiers. Knowing how to set up a softbox, knowing how to set up an octabank or a strip light, knowing how to use an umbrella correctly, knowing how to set up a strobe light and operate it. When the photographer calls out, "Hey, I need a stop and a half more out of that light," knowing what that means. All this strobe equipment's essentially doing the same thing. It's generating a pop of light. It's what is different is the power of the units, the interface of the unit, and some of the other bells and whistles. Does it have high-speed sync? Does it have freeze mode? One's flash duration may be shorter than another. One's color temperature may fluctuate upon power versus another. Different types of modifier heads. So being able to operate strobe equipment is going to be higher up my list of importance than being able to operate software. Number 4. Being a self-starter. What does that mean? That's one of those catchphrases you see on resumes all the time. Like, oh, here's somebody's, they're a self-starter. They're personable. It's like the list of attributes that they're describing themselves. Well, being a self-starter is not something you necessarily need to put on your resume. It's something you need to be, right? And what does that mean? That means that you're going to, at the end of the shoot, sweep the floor and take out the garbage and clean the bathroom without anybody asking you to do so. You're going to find those moments in the day that are down and nobody's asking you to do anything, and you're going to go do that busy work in those moments that, there's nothing happening for you. It's about keeping the gear organized. It's about coiling the cables that are not in use. It's about little simple stuff like, you're wrapping a cable. It's not that hard to grab a couple paper towels, hit them with Windex, and as you're wrapping the cable, be cleaning the cable off. That kind of stuff is really important for you getting hired again because the photographer notices that. They say, "Oh, wow, look at that. I've never seen any assistant ever do that. That's awesome." Little things like that, being a self-starter. Number 3, staying organized. And again, along with this, you show up on set and, maybe you've traveled there from another location and you've got, 12 cases of gear. Well, it's your job as the photo assistant to make sure nothing gets lost. It's your job to make sure everything stays organized. If you pulled a clamp out of that particular case, that's the case that clamp should go back into. Sometimes good little hack nowadays, we have these cell phones, right? And we can just boom, take a quick picture of once you open those cases. If you didn't pack them that day, if you didn't pack those cases that day, you can take a quick snap And that way, at the end of the day, when you're packing all the gear, you can just refer to your photos and say, oh, this is how they like things packed. That would be a good hack for you. So staying organized with this kind of stuff, just to make life easier for everybody. And the last thing you want is the photographer to say, hey, can you make sure my stuff gets back in the case correctly? Because I'm looking for this thing and I can't find it. That increases the stress level of a shoot if the boss is having to ask for that kind of thing. Nip that in the bud. Just be organized from the get-go. Number 2, being aware. This seems kind of like a funny thing, but it's true. You know, as a photo assistant, there's actually quite a bit of like downtime. There's quite a bit of like time on set when the client and the art director and the photographer are mulling over the shot, and you might be hanging. Okay, and the worst thing for you to do is to kind of like just start spacing out off into another direction. Happens all the time, and it can also be pretty annoying to some sets and some clients and photographers if you're that photo assistant who's like checking your Insta, that sort of thing, right? So it's a good idea. Being aware means that you're present on the shoot. You're part of this process. So, hanging there, but remaining aware of what's happening. Being aware also helps with, safety issues, being aware of what's going on set. Little things like, you're shooting with like a 12 by butterfly up on high rollers and you're outside and now it's time to go to lunch. Being aware means things like we should table that thing so that when the wind picks up, we're going to sandbag it down and it's not going to become a big sail in the wind and fall over. Little things like that. So, being aware of other people on set, being aware of where you should be at any given time. Doesn't mean you need to be walking around totally paranoid. Just means that you need to be engaged actively in the shoot, aware of what's going on so that you can be more helpful. Number 1 of my top skills that you need if you want to work on set in a photo assistant capacity, having a good attitude. This business can be trying at times, especially on some of the really slow shoots, for sure. I'm somebody that operates best early in the morning. A lot of these videos that I film here are filmed early in the morning. For whatever reason, I'm more aware and more fresh for some reason. Come 4 p.m., I'm starting to drag and I need, a Red Bull or coffee or yerba mate or something like that to kind of pep me up. So, it's those times, if you're not eating right or if you're hungover or, you're not drinking enough water and you're tired or the shoot's boring, that kind of stuff, that can all start to creep up and create a bad attitude. And a bad attitude is a little bit of a killer because everybody gets to feel that, when you start to have a bad attitude, everybody on set's like, geez, Debbie Downer over here or what have you. And, it doesn't help the situation. So it's important that you take care of yourself, obviously, and to do the things you need to do in order to be your best self and have the best attitude you can. And if you find yourself being, bitter or upset or angry or, or any sorts of emotions that might come through the door at the studio that day, that's not going to be very helpful for your mental condition or the mental condition of everybody that you're working with. Everybody's got bad days. Everybody's got shit going on in their life that it's not like always peaches and roses out there in the world. But it's important if you're showing up at work that day that you do your best to kind of compartmentalize that until lunch break or after. If it's one of those shoots where there's no clients around, and you have a good relationship with the photographer, I don't know, maybe then you can discuss what's going on. But it's really best to kind of leave that stuff at the door and just have a good attitude. You are getting to do something that a lot of people don't do. A lot of people are stuck in miserable jobs. And if you have the opportunity to be working on set with other people in a creative field, you're one of the lucky ones, really. So you should have a good attitude. And the minute you start feeling like you're sliding and having negative attitude about what you do, that's the time for you to start to shift into other things. So if you like this video, hit that like sign. If you didn't, know what to do. You can leave comments down below if you'd like. Please hit the subscribe if you like more of this content. The little bell will notify you when new videos come out. Thank you for watching. Thanks for being here. I appreciate it. See you again.